Yes, thank you, Aziz, for this introduction. Today, I would like to talk about an issue that has been forgotten by the world: the situation of prisoners of conscience in the United Arab Emirates. This issue may need hours to talk about, as we are talking about dozens of prisoners of conscience and many disgusting violations of human rights in the UAE. But I will try to summarize the issue in these minutes. During the past decade, the UAE Authority has detained and imprisoned several prominent human rights defenders, journalists, and political activists. These individuals have been subjected to torture and
Hi everyone.
other form of ill treatment and denied access to medical care. They have been convicted of crimes such as insulting the state or defaming the ruler under the country's strict laws on speech and expression. For over 10 years, the UAE Authority have been unjustly detaining more than 60 Emiratis who were arrested in 2012 and sentenced them to between 7 and 15 years in prison during a trial in 2013. That trial failed to meet the international minimum standard of a fair trial. The list of 60 detainees include lawyers, judges, academics, and human rights activists, such as Dr. Sultan Al-Qasimi and Dr. Mohammed Al-Mansouri. It also includes Dr. Mohammed Al-Rakan, one of the leading human rights advocates, and also it includes the Dean of the Graduate School at the UAE University, Dr. Hadif Al-Awais. Since their arrest in 2012, this group of prisoners, which became known as UAE 94 Group, have been subjected to serious violations, including arbitrary detention, enforced disappearance, torture, and ill treatment, while some of their family members continue to be harassed and persecuted. This year, the detainees have now spent almost 11 years behind bars, while some of them were denied family visits or communication with their families for years. Some of their families have been subjected to and continue to be subjected to reprisals. In addition to the UAE 94 detainees, the UAE government has unjustly imprisoned several other prominent human rights defenders and journalists. One of the most prominent cases is that of Ahmed Mansour, who was arrested in 2017 and sentenced to 10 years in prison on charges of insulting the UAE leaders and publishing false information that harms the country's reputation. Mansour is known for his advocacy on issues such as freedom of expression. He has been subjected to solitary confinement and denied access to medical care. There are also political activists such as Dr. Nasser bin Ghaith, who was sentenced to 10 years in prison on charges of committing hostile act against a foreign state. And this charge was because of a tweet that he wrote back in 2015 criticizing Abdel Fattah al-Sisi regime. While I'm talking to you right now, more than 3/4 of these prisoners have been completed their prison sentences, yet they are still in arbitrary detention. The UAE Authority refuses to release them for allegedly posing a terrorist threat, using vague laws that allow their indefinite detention in violation of Article 9 of International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and other international covenants. Some of these detainees completed their sentences years. Some of these detainees completed their sentences years ago, such as Abdullah Al-Hulu, who is still in prison despite his sentence ending 6 years ago, and also the engineer Abdul Wahid Al-Badi, who has completed his sentence 5 years ago and yet still in prison. Before I conclude, I would like to remind you of the case of Alia Abdel Noor, who died in prison because of inadequate health treatment. Alia died in prison despite the appeal of human rights organizations to the UAE Authority to release her so she may die among her family. I brought Alia Abdel Noor case to show you that the UAE Authority is willing to keep prisoners in prison till they die. Many of the current prisoners of conscience are suffering from health issues and their ages are in the mid 70s. I am afraid that one day another case of Ali Abdel-Noor, we will face, another death of, we will face or we will hear about another death of a prisoner of conscience. So it is time for the international community to stand up and demand justice for these prisoners in the UAE. We cannot remain silent while individuals are punished for exercising their fundamental human rights. We must call on the UAE authorities to release these individuals and ensure their rights are respected and protected. We are here to tell these prisoners of conscience that we stand with you. We will not forget you. And I invite all human rights organizations and the international community to join our call for their release. Thank you. Before I answer the question, I need to elaborate a little about what Matthew has just said. It is very disturbing experience. I know that Matthew, had very disturbing experience, but I need to highlight that every prisoner of conscience has gone through the same situations. So every prisoner of conscience has been detained in secret prisons, and they has been detained in solitary confinement, and they has been subjected to torture. And when I'm talking about torture here, I'm talking about like beating. They like the solitary confinement, very cold weather. So for almost 6 months, like the detainees in the case UAE 94, they had been in secret prisons for 6 months from July 2012 until March 2000. So it is more than 6 months. It is now around 9 months until March 2013. This is, unfortunately, it is not only the problem that this is happening, the problem that it became normal. So when keeping people in such a prisons, in such facility, they consider it as normal. They only say, okay, why you oppose the government? Why you tweet it in a way that the government doesn't like? This is your responsibility. So they are, instead of blaming the government, they blaming the innocent. They blaming the victim of a tweeting. Exercising normal human rights action, tweeting in a normal way, criticizing an Egyptian government, for example, the people now will start blaming you instead of blaming the government of torturing you. And when we talk about state security cases, we talk about tweets. So tweet considered to be a state security case. And I'm not really sure how can you imagine that a tweet is a state security threat. A tweet about something not related to the UAE, about Egypt. So Nasser bin Ghaith, when he criticized Abdel Fattah al-Sisi regime, he was, subjected to a state security case. And unfortunately, that case was only a 1-degree trial. So these kind of things happening. Ahmed al-Zahabi was tortured. Ahmed al-Zahabi was beaten in the prison, and this was documented in the paper of the trial. This is what was brought to the judge in the front of the judge, and the judge did not comment on this, unfortunately. Going back to your answers, to your questions, I do not want to take a lot of your time, but unfortunately, when people come to the UAE and visit the UAE, they see the widest street and the longest building, and they are happy. I can understand that, but unfortunately they are supporting the government against its people, because when they go there, they just, because we are the people from UAE, so we suffer more than the other people who come to visit. So when they come to visit the UAE, they come to just enjoy the beaches. I understand that. I understand that, because when they spend their money, they come to visit and enjoy. But they need to know the reality. The reality is not only the longest building or the widest street or the happiest people. This is not a true slogan, but this is what they are trying to promote. There are people in prisons beyond their sentence. Nobody knows when they're going to be allowed to be released. Their families cannot travel. They have, their families cannot even, like many has revoked their citizenship, so their children cannot go to the hospital, for example, because they do not have a valid identity. So there is a problem in the UAE. It is not only about the longest and the widest. Also it is about people being in prisons for years, and only God knows when they're going to be released. So I really thank you for having this panel, and I really hoping to hear some good news in the future times very soon. Thank you, Aziz.
you very much.